a brutal reality for Democrats.
How low can you go? Voters' views of Democrats in Congress, the lowest ever approval ratings on record. These are truly horrific numbers. They're in the trash bin of history.
Well, the Democratic Party is deeply unpopular. In fact, it hasn't been this disliked by Americans for over 30 years. On today's program, we're going to be talking to several former Democrats and asking them why they left the party, which was once considered to be far cooler than the Republicans.
They started threatening me and my family. Death threats.
It's very much like leaving a cult.
Well, more from them in a moment, but first, let's look at the state of the Democratic Party today.
Devastating, cascading poll numbers for Democrats.
NBC News national poll finds that 55% have a negative view of the party. Just 63% of Democrats have a favorable view of their own party.
This is what's happened since the election. The number has just fallen off the cliff for Democrats.
Our brand new CNN poll shows that the Democratic Party's favorability is at an all-time low.
Even the Democrats don't like the Democrats these days.
Democrats now trying to figure out what went wrong.
No plan, no strategy, no message. That's a quote. That's how a Democratic lawmaker was describing the Democrat.
Some say the party needs a much different approach on immigration.
Immigration has been a terrible decision for Democrats. I don't know who they think they were playing to when they let millions of people come cruising through the border.
I have never seen the Democratic Party this deranged. I mean, if you watch them, it's like they're looking around trying to find the weirdest, strangest things they can be for.
The Democratic Party has become the party of the establishment.
The dominance of identity politics on the left, which made it push for all kinds of DEI policies, alienated many mainstream voters.
We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such.
The Democrats need to focus less on who is woke and more on who is broke.
They do need a new Joe Rogan.
But they had me.
Well, number one, they had you. Number one, they had you.
I feel like the Democratic Party left me.
It's now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness.
It's important for America to have a center-left party, and for that party to be competitive. And a good first step toward that goal would be to make the voters not want to punch you in the face.
There was a break in trust with the Democratic Party and the electorate. There was a feeling that there wasn't actually honesty about the condition of the president.
I want to know who thought it was a good idea that Joe Biden stand for another 4 years at 80 years of age.
We should have run a process rather than just grant Kamala Harris her ability to run without a democratic process. She got slaughtered in the election.
The Democratic Party should put the people out there who the people want.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could be the likely Democrat for 2028.
That's America. That's the country that we fight for.
Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez continued their Fight Oligarchy tour, drawing an overflow crowd for a rally in Missoula, Montana.
This is Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom starting a podcast. This is his official presidential campaign has begun.
It's really been interesting, the reaction to the podcast. I mean, we had some controversial figures on, I'll acknowledge that, and Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and some others. But you're right. I mean, this idea that we can't even have a conversation with the other side.
You have to. They won.
It is tough love time for the Democratic Party. I think it needs to be stripped down and rebuilt.
Okay, let's bring in our guests now. And today we have political strategist Lindy Li and the founder of Walkaway Campaign, Brandon Straka. They are both former Democrats who are now very fed up with the party. Well, Lindy, I'll let you go first since you're the newest defection, so to speak. Just tell the viewer what you used to do for the party.
I did a lot of things with my former party, and it's been about 15 years of this relationship that ended up being quite abusive, but I was part of their leadership. I was on their National Alliance Committee, which is an assortment of their biggest donors. Many of us have raised tens of millions of dollars for the party. I was the youngest member, one of the youngest members of their NFC. I also served in various leadership roles over the years. I was even involved in Pennsylvania Democrats, so I was involved from top to bottom. I was a campaign bundler, and I raised millions of dollars this past cycle for both Biden and subsequently for Harris.
And what was the moment you decided to walk away?
so many things, and it's been a tumultuous relationship for the past decade. Even 5 years ago, AOC, the congresswoman, tried to cancel me because I said I thought the party should moderate itself and stop lurching to the far left. The ground was shifting beneath our feet during the Obama era. We went from a stable, moderate party into something that I didn't sign up for, a woke, trans insanity cult. And there's no room for dissension. If you dare to disagree, they will excommunicate you. There's no room for diversity of opinion. The party of diversity didn't allow you any free thought. And so I didn't sign up for open borders. I didn't sign up for DEI woke. I didn't sign up for the trans lunacy and bloated government spending. I didn't sign up for any of that. But the final straw was when they wasted $2.5 billion, a lot of which I raised, on celebrities and oligarchs like Oprah and Beyonce and Cardi B. It was like reverse Robin Hood. They took from everyday Americans and gave it to these extremely wealthy friends, these cronies of theirs.
And Lindy, was it the election failure on November the 5th that when you finally said, I'm out?
No, I didn't actually want to leave. I wanted to reform the party. I didn't leave until I had no choice, until they started threatening me and my family, like threatening. Name calling, I can survive. It's not pleasant, but...
Are you serious? The Democratic Party threatened you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They definitely did. I had to hire a lawyer.
What form did these threats take?
Death threats, but also defamation. They call me a communist spy, despite the fact that the communist regime in China killed my family. That's why we ended up in the West.
Well, this is quite this is quite extraordinary because the the Democrats are supposed to be the party of caring.
It's just a facade. It's so false and hypocritical. And the party of, immigrants is calling for my deportation. They're calling for me to be deported. I'm an American citizen, thank you very much. Where are they going to deport me to? Philadelphia? I'm already here.
I'm amazed. Brandon,
this is my home. This is the only country I know.
Brandon, we had you on a number of years ago. You were a bit of a trendsetter, really, because you established the Walk Away campaign years and years ago. And do you recognize any of these experiences from Lindy?
I recognize all of them. The price that I have paid for walking away from the Democratic Party has been unspeakably, it's inexplicable. I mean, I can honestly say from every mass banning and cancellation that you can possibly imagine, to the point where I've actually had networks of stalkers, cyber stalkers trying to destroy my finances, destroy my career. I mean, I say, and not hyperbolically, that it's very much like leaving a cult. These people, if you dare, especially if you're a member of a minority community, if you're Black, brown, LGBT, and you leave the Democratic Party, it's like they will do anything that they can to destroy your name, your reputation, your finances, your professional career, your personal relationships, to try to, I think, send a message to other people that this is what will happen to you if you make the same decision to leave us.
So the two of you are describing it as a cult. Brandon, in what way is it a cult?
Well, for starters, people believe things that are not rational and they're not true. And if, to the point that Lindy made, if you dare to challenge that system, if you dare to ask questions, then you will be excommunicated or you will be attacked. But I think one of the most egregious examples was the Summer of Love of 2020, where the political left and the Democratic Party justified the burning, looting, killing, and beating of cities and police officers and individuals all over the country in the name of this movement, Black Lives Matter, saying that police brutality is, this common experience that Black people in our country are going through, that if you're Black in America, you can't walk to your mailbox without being attacked by a police officer. There were no statistics to back this up. There were no FBI, no crime statistics, nothing backed up this narrative that they were pushing. But night after night after night, the liberal media would go out and repeat and echo this narrative about this country where Black people are not safe.
So, Brandon,
and it caused this mass hysteria.
And Brandon, are you seeing echoes of that now about DOGE and Tesla?
Absolutely, because now we're seeing the left has become completely emboldened to go out and commit political violence, to protest their cause with absolutely no boundaries. They're throwing Molotov cocktails, makeshift bombs. They're burning buildings to the ground. We've seen all of this before, and there seems to be no repercussions, no consequences for anything that they do. And the Democrats, the party, the leaders of this party that are in charge, have an opportunity to come forward and say, this is not the way. This is not what we do. But do they do that? Never. They actually encourage this violence, and they justify it, and they whitewash it.
Lindy, you've both called it a cult. So tell me, when was the Democratic Party taken over and taken in that direction?
That's a really good point. I really believe that under Obama, the lurch to the left accelerated so quickly, and it became a monster that I don't even recognize today. And it's just completely out of step with the values that I grew up with. I grew up as a moderate Democrat in suburban Pennsylvania. Like stable family values and fiscal responsibility, but they don't care about any of that now. It's all about the woke and the cultural wars.
And it was also the party of the working class, the working men and women.
Exactly.
And it separated themselves from that. I think people like Bernie Sanders, at least, do say that that is happening.
Well, you bring up Bernie Sanders, but I clashed with him as well. I mean, his team in AOC, as I mentioned, they attacked me vehemently because I represented the opposite side of the party. So it's been really rough. They blasted me because I called out his communist ties. He went to Russia actually as a young man, and I called that out. And they attacked me and they forced me to resign. I was treasurer of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party of PA Young Dems, and they forced me out because I was a moderate Democrat and everyone else was a Bernie bro. So there's no room for a diversity of thought at all.
So who's in charge of the Democratic Party now? Because it's really hard to tell.
It's that guy who looks even skinnier than I do, David Hogg, who wants to abolish ICE and who wants to abolish the Second Amendment. It's as though they learned absolutely nothing from the 2024 election. And most people don't know this because they're not privy to internal politics, but they actually reelected 50% of the 2024 leadership. So if they're making the same mistakes over and over again, they don't care. They're just doubling down on a losing agenda.
Brandon, same question to you. Who do you think's in charge of the Democratic Party now?
Well, I think Lindy just, named some figureheads, but I mean, I would argue that we don't really actually know. I mean, they elected Joe Biden, but now, after many of us for so many years were saying Joe Biden is cognitively declined, he doesn't have his faculties about him, he's not fit to run or to be our president. Now suddenly even the Democrats in retrospect are saying, yeah, we agree. And many people who are surrounding Joe Biden are saying, look, we knew something was wrong. This wasn't okay. So this party installed somebody that they knew they could manipulate and control because he was not in full run of himself. Who are the people who are running the Democratic Party? I think many of us would like to know. We use this term oftentimes in our country, deep state, and a lot of us are treated like we're wearing tinfoil hats or we're crazy for using that term. But there are, in fact, people behind the scenes, and I couldn't sit here today and name names.
Well, I just find it very strange, Brandon, that 80% of all Americans say that biological men who identify as women should not be allowed to play in women's sports. It's one of those 80-20 split issues, as Trump has said many times. So how is it that an entire party risked the election, lost the election, and is still holding on to this position? What weird things are happening behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, I would argue that they're very, very out of touch with their base. And I think that they've become, emboldened, and that they believe that if they push hard enough and if they propagandize hard enough, they're going to be able to basically capture the mentality of the voting base, which has not been effective. I mean, it's important to remember in the United States, the left controls the media. For a long time, they controlled our social media almost entirely, education, entertainment, nearly every pillar of American culture and society. And so they felt like if we just keep pushing these agendas, the radical trans agenda, every woke agenda that we have, we're going to be able to just mow over the American people. And I think the people said, enough, this has gone too far. And they came out and they voted in November of 2024 to get rid of this.
A final question, and a quick one for both of you. Lindy Li first. Do you see the Democrats coming back, and if so, how?
Not in the near term, because as Brandon alluded to, there's no leader, only figureheads. And right now they're sitting at a pretty 21% approval rating, which is historically low. And something else that hasn't been talked about much, but I know as a former donor, the money has stopped. Right now, they're relying on those recurring monthly donations on ActBlue and NGP Van. They basically trick donors into giving monthly payments. But in terms of the big donors, people like me, we are leaving because we saw how they wasted our hard-earned money.
Brandon?
Well, I think that I hope they do change. I hope that we can return to a point where we have a sane, healthy, normal two-party system in this country, which we desperately need. But I agree that's a while off, because if you look right now at California Governor Gavin Newsom, what he's trying to do right now is almost rebrand the party as a party of moderate values, and he's sort of signaling that he's more centrist, he's more in the middle. The problem is it's not real and it's not genuine, and people are going to notice that. If they want to bring people back and they want to be a party that people want to get behind, they're going to have to authentically recalibrate and become moderate once again. And I don't think they're ready to do that.
Brandon Straka, Lindy Li, thank you both very much. Much appreciated. Okay, let's look at some of the contenders to lead the party now. And here are some of the runners and riders.
In at number 5 with a 5% chance, according to the bookmakers, is Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. Elected in 2018, she made headlines in 2020 after the FBI thwarted a plot to kidnap her.
2 militia groups who are preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
At number 4 is Pete Buttigieg, or as Donald Trump sarcastically calls him, Alfred E. Neumann, the character from Mad magazine. Buttigieg is a war veteran and a longtime critic of Trump.
Russia is our adversary, and he's got us fighting Canada and helping Russia. It's upside down.
The odds give him an 8% chance of being the Democrats' nominee. At number 3 is Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, known for his strange sense of humor.
Get out of my house. I don't know how many times I gotta throw you out of here. Get out of here. Come on.
Shapiro was seen as a potential running mate for Kamala Harris before being beaten to it by Tim Walz. Bookies give him a 9% chance. Number 2 with an 11% chance is the youngest of the bunch, 35-year-old Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, well known for her fiery anti-Trump speeches at rallies.
I don't think this is Trump country, I think this is our country.
And position as heir apparent to fellow progressive Democrat Bernie Sanders. And currently at number 1 with odds of 13%, you guessed it, California Governor Gavin Newsom, known for his sharp tongue, animated hand gestures, and multitude of progressive policies. Borrowing political strategy from the Republicans, Newsom has launched his own podcast, inviting on conservative guests such as Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk.
We'll stress
I'm a tariff guy. I'm a tariff guy.
I appreciate that. I knew you were at USC early because my niece, who's graduate.
She was the one with the MAGA hat on.
She was.
Okay, let's bring in our second panel now, and we have the Republican commentator, Scottie Nell Hughes, and the Democratic pollster, Jeff Horwitt. Welcome to the program, both of you. Jeff, if I could start with you. We've been looking at the potential leaders of the party. Is it about the leadership, or is it about the issues?
Well, thanks for having me. Look, this is really about the leadership, and what we saw in the 2024 election is that free and fair elections have consequences. The Democrats lost the election here, and this is really a result. They're paying the price here with record low ratings, and this is much more right now to do with a leadership vacuum. And Democrats are starting to get their voice back. I think it's a generational shift here, which we're seeing in the Democratic Party, which I think is important at this stage, and we're seeing this both in electoral terms in elections across the country, Wisconsin being a very good example in a state Supreme Court race, and also what you're seeing at the grassroots level and with Senator Booker, starting to really push back against the direction of the country that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are taking America in, and people are saying no, they don't want this. And a really important piece, a part of this, is that there's an anger here, which I think was really missing from the Democratic message over the course of the 2024 election, and that's, I think, going to be a critical component of what it's going to take to get the party to really reboot itself and begin anew.
Jeff, if I'm not misunderstanding you, you're saying that they are unfavorably seen because they lost the election, but surely they also lost the election because they were unfavorably seen. And that would have been presumably because they were taking the wrong positions on the issues?
Well, I think what we've had going back really from 2008 is we've had 2006 rather is we've had change elections. This is a country that is very unhappy with the direction where things are going, whether it's been a Republican administration or a Democratic administration. And in the 2024 election, because of inflation being such an important issue and really driving a lot of voters away from Democrats who traditionally would have voted for them, there was an issue, and there was really one chief issue on the ballot here in 2024, and that was the economy and specifically the cost of goods and services. And that's why I think you'll see that there was a rejection of Democratic policies in 2024. But what we're seeing in the first few months of the Trump administration, even though he has promised to lower prices, is we're seeing quite the opposite in his policies. And to be sort of the answer to the direction that the Trump administration is taking things is a very powerful part of how Democrats are going to recover their standing with the American voters.
Scottie, Jeff's trying to say that it was the leadership that was the problem, and also if it was an issue, well, it was only about inflation. I suspect that you think it was about much more than that.
Well, it is imperative, Matthew, that after every campaign, that the campaign that lost does a realistic and honest autopsy of their campaign. In this case, that's what the Democrats are doing. But are they actually being honest about it? It's real easy to say that the reason why the Democrats lost was because they took a wrong position on issues. But the fact is, the Democrats made those issues be at the forefront. So not only did they pick the wrong side of that issue, but they actually picked the wrong issue to campaign on. And as my colleague rightfully pointed out, the American voter right now is extremely temperamental. And that just shows their overwhelmingly dissatisfaction with both parties. There's not one that everybody's going, this is the candidates across the board that I would like to support. Americans are very happy or unhappy with the leadership that's happening coming out of the Oval Office, but I think it's also coming out of Congress right now. And that's why you're going to see some changes and some shifts coming, and why you really can't predict if Republicans are going to stick with Republicans or if Democrats are going to stick with the typical Democrat line right now. So I think, to his point, to your point, it's not necessarily about the issues at the forefront, the position on the issues. It's about what are the American people really caring about. And in my opinion, Donald Trump might have got it right this election side, but I don't think either party really has it figured out yet what the American people actually want. And they're going to have to do it quickly.
Jeff, let's focus on the American people and one particular cohort, the working class, which in American terms means anybody without a college degree, apparently. And it seems that Trump won 55% of the working class, whereas Kamala Harris only won 40%. He is an American billionaire, and he won 55% of the working class. That's supposed to be the Democrat Party's strength.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think there is this anger. There's anger out there, and Donald Trump was successful in tapping into it in the way that Democrats were not in 2024, and that is. Again, I think that's going to be critical to, if the direction of the country remains 70+% who say wrong track or close to that, then you're still going to, whether both parties have to understand what that means, and they have to meet voters in that place. And the working class vote is a huge voting bloc, a critically important voting bloc. And what we're seeing is sort of a sea change in attitudes for working class voters who traditionally had been Democratic voters.
Right, but Bernie Sanders says that he sees a party that has abandoned the working class, concentrating on social issues instead of economic ones, and they need to come back to their roots. And this is apparently what AOC and Bernie Sanders are arguing as they crisscross the country, that the Democratic Party needs to concentrate once again on winning back the working class.
Yes, look, working class voters make up a huge portion of the electorate, and without them, it's very difficult, if nearly impossible, to win an election. And both AOC and Bernie Sanders are quite right. And what's fascinating here is that a lot of those voters who are now Trump voters, who won a majority of those voters, were voters who voted for Democrats going back before 2016. And so these are voters who have historically felt that the establishment, the elites, are not speaking out for them, do not represent their interests, and are really going against them. And in our current politics, Donald Trump has been able to tap into that where others haven't, and that's going to be a really important group to watch as we see what's going on here with the direction of the country economically and the tariffs that are going underway. Again, he has promised.
I mean, that's an interesting point you raised. The tariffs might actually bring back working class jobs. What do you think, Scottie?
Absolutely, Matthew. That is the one area that Donald Trump is winning on this. Now, he might be losing with the Wall Street bankers and those politicians in the Beltway. You had the historical moment, the fact that the unions and the union workers and the leaders of these unions in the Rose Garden doing a standing ovation praising a Republican president. That has never happened in 50, 60 years in politics, at least in modern day Republican politics. Democrats always did a better job of working with the unions, but the unions became fed up. They recognized that American policies underneath Democrat and Republican governorships have sent these industries into other countries. So these tariffs are actually something that the American workers, while I see the meltdown that's happening with those that own $1 million in stocks and have 401ks, the majority of Americans have not been able to afford such luxuries. So we actually welcome these tariffs that are going to drive these businesses back into the United States. We're sorry for the billionaire short-term pain, but here in the long-term gain, we know that we're going to bring the jobs back here so our workers can go back to work.
Scottie, Nell, Hughes, and Jeff Horwitt, thank you both very much. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Until next week then, goodbye.